Welcome, I'm Kayden Gray. Welcome to Go Fuck Yourself, an Impulse London conversation. Today we're going to explore how our community is reacting to what's happening and whether there are ways to actually find happiness and peace and at least make it easier for yourself and others while you're isolated. I'm going to be joined by two wonderful people. One of them is Harry from Gaymanity, and the other a sex and intimacy coach, Finn Deerhart. Make sure you pay attention because we're going to be doing a sex toy giveaway following this live chat. Let's get Harry in. An awkward silence. I hear you, I see you. Hello. Harry is a blogger. He runs Gaymanity, which is gay blog. If you like a meme, that's definitely a place to go. He's also part of Impulse. He works in my team and advocacy team. Thank you so much for joining me. I really want to talk to you about your observations about what's actually been, how our community is reacting to this unprecedented and frankly weird and crazy time, because we've been asked to stay home, which is counterintuitive because we like to connect, but obviously it's necessary if you want to protect ourselves and people around us. It's a challenging time for everyone, and I was wondering if there's any observations that you have.
Yeah, so I think the one thing I've noticed is there has somewhat been kind of a lack of empathy and understanding for certain people who may be struggling in this time in isolation, whether that's with regards to mental health or regards to trying to find some sort of way to cope. And even when I put stuff out there, there was always this kind of backlash of feedback of the only thing we need to be focusing on is COVID. Like, that's the only issue. Don't spread it. That's it.
So what kind of stuff would you put out there?
Obviously, there was a lot of things going on social media about people who may still be trying to hook up amongst this time. And for me, it was, I kind of try to think about, I think it's very multifaceted. There are some people who may superficially be hooking up because they can't let a guy go past no matter what it is. But I think that for some people, it may highlight a deeper issue. Maybe COVID is the least of their worries, depending on what they're dealing with, whether that's the environment they're living with, or if it's anything to do with their mental health.
You say those kind of people. What kind of people?
There are people who suffer really badly with being isolated, they're being touch-starved, they could be dealing with compulsive and obsessive behaviors, they could be addicted to chemsex. So none of these things I kind of have a first-hand experience with, but I am empathetic with that could be something that's really kind of starting to make them crack as we're being isolated and locked away.
Yes, and you know what? I'm actually really happy in the lockdown. I don't really miss sex at the minute, but there was a time, I don't know, maybe 2-3 years ago when I had a really compulsive relationship with sex and with drugs, and I would probably be in the category of people who really struggle to abstain. So I really empathize with that. I've spoken about it on social media, and again, I did have backlash. And I wonder, do you think that people think that talking about these issues is a green light for people to hook up? Is that what you intend to do, exploring these issues?
No, I mean, I think a lot of the time with what I try to say, I mean, most of the backlash I got was from my followers on Facebook. And I was just pointing out, could this person be selfish and irresponsible? Or is there a number of issues that they're dealing with that highlights why they're hooking up? And I think a lot of people misunderstand that empathy and understanding, they kind of conflate that with advocating and condoning behavior, where I'm like, that's not what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting that if you took the time to go and fact find, speak to the person and dig into perhaps why they're hooking up, why they're attempting to hook up, then you could potentially find out something more from them. And in that way, you can to help them, to prevent them from going out and hooking up with people and potentially spreading COVID. So you're doing a two-pronged approach that you're helping the individual, but you're also helping the community.
That's a very good point. And I feel like you may not be helping anyone if you actually do shame people, but I think people do that because they don't really, we live in a heightened state of anxiety. And so we talk through that emotion at everyone, and you can see it anywhere, everywhere. What would you say we can do to help everyone cope at the minute? given what we've just discussed?
I think the first thing is just a matter of listening. And I think it's kind of think about the culture of being on Grindr. I know for most people, like, it's not the place to have these deep and meaningful conversations. And it's like, well, we've got so much time to be able to invest in each other to actually have these conversations. So I feel like if you actually are on Grindr and you're just there to try and browse through some time, and you feel that there's someone in there who's attempting to hook up with you or hooking up with people, just take the time to speak to them. And instead of kind of going abroad, trying to shame them, trying to be judgmental, just speak to them. Because I think just probably having that dialogue conversation, maybe it's just what they needed. They probably just need someone to listen to them. And like in some cases where I've spoken to people online about when they just sent me like a dick pic, and I just try to be like polite, like I don't really think that's appropriate to send me a dick pic if I haven't asked. And some people will get hoity-toity about it and they'll have a go at you, but other people will apologize, and then we can have a conversation about consent, and hopefully they've gone away kind of understanding why you shouldn't just throw nudes out there. So I feel like if you take that same approach with these people, then perhaps you can help them understand why they shouldn't. Then at the same time, you are helping them. And I think what the issue is, most people are kind of focusing on not spreading COVID to other people. And it's like, well, you just kind of need to narrow that down to the individual, find out what they're suffering with, and kind of make the conversation about them. Because then I feel like sometimes if you then just start thinking about, oh, well, you're selfish, you're spreading to other people, you're killing other people, I think a lot of people will just turn off. It will just have the opposite of the side effect.
Yeah, we've centered COVID as the main thing, kind of forgetting that we're imperfect and we have needs that are being almost violated by this, by these circumstances. And like for every day I go for a bike ride and I see how many people are in the park, and I think this is kind of, it's kind of the same, because people also are in a sense breaking the rules or stretching the rules. But I wonder if maybe when it refers to sex, people are less kind and more violent in expressing themselves towards you if you are doing something that they don't approve of.
I think so. Some of the responses I was getting back from people, they were kind of just very copy and pasted sound bites, as if like, you know, you just need to have a wank. If you just need to get off and go have a wank, and then it was just like man up, as if like your issues don't matter. And I came across a very good analogy today where someone said that, you know, we're not in the same boat, we're in the same storm. And some people may be sailing through this just fine. Like for me, example, my biggest issue is getting enough alone time. Like my sexual gratification is just masturbation. But there could be someone who is struggling. And I had someone message me saying that they are at the moment have to isolate with their family. The environment is very unhealthy. And most of the time they would go and hook up with people to fill the void of their loneliness and being depressed. Like that's now been taken away from them, and they've completely been structured into a very unhealthy environment. And so there isn't saying, oh, okay, I understand, go hook up. It's just simply understanding how that person is really struggling in their environment. So like I may be fine sailing through on a cruise ship, but he could be in the water with no boat.
I agree that the patience and the kindness would definitely make a big change on an individual and a social level. I wonder if you have any advice for anyone who, in fact, can't abstain. And I'm not, again, this is not me saying, if you're really struggling with not having sex, please go hook up and we're going to help you do that, you know? But
yeah,
do you think there's any damage control that we can apply to people who really can't abstain from having sex? If you look at it from an idealistic point of view, you either do it and you're a good person, or you don't follow the rules and you can go fuck yourself, right? But and a different context than what this is about, of course. But I wonder if when you can't really abstain, whether it's mental well-being or sex, substance use, are there any ways that you can any ways to kind of control the damage and minimize the risk of being infected with COVID-19?
I think it depends on the circumstances. So I think it's all about getting creative. So I know in terms of, say, if you live with other gay men, maybe they may be your friends. They're and I know most people probably don't like the idea of this, but if you really need that sexual gratification or even just physical contact, then perhaps there are some lines that you can overstep with your friends. And it don't always have to be sexual. It can just be cuddling, playing with each other's hair, just little things like that. And if it does get to the point where overboard that you really do need that sexual gratification, you're climbing up the walls. I know probably people give me backlash for suggesting this, but if there is someone that you have already kind of been sleeping with, then perhaps you can make a pact with each other to, you know, see each other in terms of that. If we're in unprecedented times, so if you really do need that gratification, then nothing stops you from helping one another in any way, shape,
and it doesn't really have to be sexual, right? It can be, like you said, it can be affection, it can be just closeness.
I guess this then adds to another case of when we talk about intimacy and affection, and a lot of people have this idea that intimacy and affection can only be for people you're building a romantic or sexual relationship. And with me and my friends, like, we do have like quite high levels of intimacy and affection. We watch a film together. You know, our clothes stay on, but, you know, I'll play with their hair, or I'm giving them a head massage, and just little things like that. And I think it's just been able to have the comfortable way to do that can make all the difference.
Right. There's one more question. I've heard someone mention something that you could call distance sex. And I don't mean someone coming into your house, because that obviously is already a really big risk, and you're supposed to make sure that you don't contaminate cross household. But someone did suggest that maybe going, like, if, you know, like, gays have been cruising for decades, maybe hundreds of years, right? I don't know how long we've been around, but someone suggested that you could just go and not go close to anyone, but watch each other jerk off. And I, you know, on the one hand, I'm like, there's room there for a lot to happen. But what if it doesn't? What if it doesn't, and you actually do indeed stay apart and jerk each other off, and not jerk yourselves off, right? Far away from each other. The way you would be in a supermarket, where, like, a lot of the time some bitch, like, just literally over the shoulder grabs a cucumber, and I'm like, seriously. So what do you think about that?
I think it's interesting. It's something that I've never entertained myself, even when we're even out of COVID. But I mean, it's time to get creative, and maybe that is the way of doing it. Like, nothing stops you from being 3 meters apart and physically enjoying someone's presence. I think one thing we've got to understand, though, a lot of people are saying, oh, we'll just video someone have sex. But we then need to understand that there are people who have in the exhaustion of that physical dissonance. So kind of maybe having video sex over and over and over again will potentially make you feel worse. So I think that is an interesting and creative way to be able to get some form of sexual gratification. But even if it isn't about sex, sometimes it could just be having the presence of someone. Then I feel like, you know, there isn't no harm in perhaps even just taking a social distance walk with someone around the park for an hour. Because even sometimes that could just be better, just to have someone different to talk to. And, you know, you're kind of will just feed off having that person present.
Someone might argue it might come with other people following the same thing, because, you know, if you are allowed to take a social distance walk, a lot of other people might do that. But I feel like people are already doing that, and I think they're going to potentially continue looking for ways to feel like things are a little bit normal. So those are great points. Yeah,
I think it's to abstain much, and I feel like if been isolating for 4 weeks by themselves, and they've been doing their service to the community and to prevent the spread of COVID, if they have one slip somewhere along the line, I'm not going to tag that person as irresponsible and selfish. They spent 4 weeks trying to do their best, trying to cope, sustain, and manage, and maybe they cracked at the 4-week hurdle. So, you know, maybe that will then give them their fix for the next 4 weeks. So I'm not going to kind of berate that person, because I can feel they've done their best.
Right. I am personally done with vilifying people for how they handle this time. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to ask Finn to come on, and I will see you in the Clapham Common in 40 minutes, right?
See you later. Bye.
Okay, so that was Harry from Gaymanity. Please do give him a follow. I got to hear some of his observations and observations about what's really happening in our community and what we can learn from that. And now I would like to move on to looking at how we can find positives in being locked down and how we can make the best out of it and make it easier on ourselves and other people. And for that, I'll be joined by Finn Deerhart. So I think Finn is already watching us. Here you are. And we're waiting for Finn. Hello!
What's up?
So I'm having to like readjust because my head keeps like bopping up and down.
I know, it looks like I'm peeking over a countertop, but I'm not.
So let me just quickly introduce you. Finn Deerhart is a sex and intimacy coach, and we met on set for Humorous TV, which is an amazing porn studio that we worked for together. And the reason why it's great is because porn carries a lot of, you know, the damage that we carry through life. And Davey Wavy is trying to unpick all of that and help us enjoy ourselves and heal. And you wrote an amazing project called Sacred Horror, which was probably the best time I've ever had on set. Thank you so much for joining me. Going from what we discussed with Harry, there's a call-out culture, and I don't think it's new necessarily. It's something that already exists and is celebrated on social media. But I wanted to ask you, why do you think people call each other out at the minute?
Well, there's something interesting about even like calling out, right? I mean, it's, I think whenever people criticize or shame for any reason, it's like a veiled way of saying something about themselves, you know? So if you piece of shit, you shouldn't be doing that, is a way of maybe in a really obscure way saying, I feel really scared and I'm afraid that your actions are going to impact me or someone that I know, you know? So I think it could be helpful just to know, like, what is it that I'm really feeling? And, you know, if you feel the urge to call somebody out, call yourself out first.
Look in the mirror, bitch.
Right. What is it that I actually want to get from this interaction? Yeah.
I think most people want to stop people in their tracks when they're committing this heinous crime of getting next to another person during quarantine, right?
Right.
Do you think it works like that?
No, I think people are really scared. I think they're trying to express that they're scared, and definitely like being called out, I think, quote unquote, activates our defenses. You know, if somebody calls me out, I'm less likely to respond in a thoughtful way, I think, than if someone was to say, you know, I feel uncomfortable about saying this, but I feel a little scared because of what you're doing and just want to talk to you about that. I'm going to be more tuned in to what they're saying versus like, you shouldn't this. My first response, I've always been kind of a rebel, is to probably be like, well, watch me do it. Stigmatizing doesn't really work. It's like clinically shown to like drive our behaviors more deeply into the realms where we can't really do anything about it.
But why do you think people are breaking the rules?
I mean, I think in and of itself, having rules is something that people like to react against. But I think it's so complex. You know, there's so many different reasons why people do what they do and how we rationalize everything in a certain way. Is this in alignment with what I want? Is this in alignment with my values? Is this something from the outside being imposed? But I think in general, generalizing, people are scared, and it's an access to something, you know, it's an access to a sense of aliveness or a sense of coping. And, you know, sex is like a gateway for like all kinds of emotional needs, especially with men. Men aren't often really in tune with what their emotional reason or desire for having sex might be. It's just the sex that they're after. So if it could be the physical contact, but it also very well might be something very much existential and emotional. And sex is like a keyhole that they're like accessing this whole world. So during this time, you know, that the great many people are feeling scared, overwhelmed, trying to manage their anxieties in a certain kind of way. And some people are doing that through, quote unquote, breaking the rules. But I think it's a coping maybe, or an affirmation of like, I'm okay. You know, if you're scared and you want to prove to yourself that you're okay, I'm gonna do what I
This
want,
makes
and
you
that,
feel normal, doesn't it?
yeah, yeah, it's complex.
Except obviously, if you do hook up with someone, and I keep saying hook up. I'm tired of saying if you do hook up with someone, but it does come down to this conversation a lot of the time. If you do not follow the guidelines, you will obviously feel a certain way about it afterwards. Like I feel really lucky that I haven't felt like doing that. Like
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm in a privileged position where
Mm.
I don't have a yeah I don't feel any negative emotions about not being able to hook up with anyone. But when
Yeah.
if someone, let's say I did, would you recommend that I keep it a secret from everyone, or do you think that I would benefit from talking to someone about it?
Yeah, the second. I think most often when we like don't say what we're experiencing and kind of compress it, I mean, if we really feel like we need to be inward with our feelings, that can be really helpful. But if we need to connect with other people, and sex is an act of connection, could, you know, in best cases, in my mind, then connecting with someone about what you're feeling is helpful, because if you don't, that's like really reinforcing the isolation and reinforcing this like sense of powerlessness, or like the lack of agency, or any number of reasons. You know, we don't share what we're experiencing. We get the benefit of that wall, you know, and the protection that might provide us from the vulnerabilities of being seen, but it also really reinforces the isolation. It's like a both and.
All right, of
Yeah.
course. But this is also a good time to talk about why we call this "Go Fuck Yourself," and it sounds really aggressive, and obviously the meaning here is different. We are offering sex toys and talking about intimacy and self-exploration, which I think is kind of a round way of saying "Go fuck yourself," because no one else can fuck you at the minute.
Right.
Yeah, I think why don't we move on to that? Why don't we
The
move on
the go
to
fuck yourself piece.
yeah, the "Go Fuck Yourself" piece and.
I love the title. I love it. I like shocking things. I really like shock value. It's just part of the way I
Oh,
like. But I
same.
also, but not shock for no reason. I like shock with an important reason. I do think there's something to be said, and this is something that I too have struggled with in my life, is to really feel the like a generative kind of quality in self-pleasuring. So for many, many years, I was in the closet, and, you know, jacking off was just this thing that I had to do because of a compressed environment around me, a compressed psychological environment, like hiding. So, you know, there've been times in my life where it like I always had this like feeling of like, well, I don't want to jack off. I want to connect with somebody. You know, like that's not good enough, or that's not the same thing, or you know, there's like these reasons why. And I think for me and for a lot of guys that I talk to around this, the orientation that we have with self-pleasure is a really big part of it. So like if you're just like anxious and like feeling cravey, and you like reach out and you're like watching lots of porn, and you just kind of watch yourself going down this like tunnel, that's one kind of way of going about it. And that, you know, isn't as maybe as generative as like making like an affirmative kind of space where you're like, I'm going to spend today taking care of myself in lots of ways, like self-pleasure being something that's an extension, like the sexual aspect being an extension of the five senses, like enjoying like, I don't know, like a hot shower, massaging my body, like making space on purpose to do it. And for most people, they wait till it's a reactive kind of thing. It's like when I'm bored,
That's the one.
scared.
And I
Go
think
ahead.
also we do have an interesting. I think it's a challenge. What you're talking about is exactly where I want to get personally, and I think a lot of people would benefit from getting there also, like meaningfully looking after yourself, not
Yeah.
just jerk off, but actually meaningful.
Right.
Something
And not to
that
say that it's, yeah, I don't want to impart at all that like going down the porn, I call it a porn tunnel, because for me, it's like, it can be like,
and
it,
then you
that's
struggle.
not a good thing. What I'm saying is like, you know, usually there are like an underlying set of circumstances or like feelings that are happening that precede that move, versus like today is like me day. I'm going to take care of my body. I'm going to take care of, that's something that's a different thing, right? So that's an orientation towards pleasure that really necessitates that we have like an entitled sense of like, pleasure is good, my body is good, I deserve to have this. And a lot of men struggle with those presets. It's like, my body's not good, I'm not good enough, there's never enough, whatever, you know.
Can I ask, given that we treat kind of self-pleasure in such a utilitarian, so we kind of commoditize our own body.
Right.
and the relationship we have with sex and body. What would you like? What would you say is the first step? How do you start on that path of connecting with yourself? Where do I start?
Okay, yeah, awesome question.
You light the
So
candle? I'm already one step.
I think I have that little candle holder. Okay, so I think it's an awesome question. And again, to kind of use as a template, whenever we're like utilizing visual imagery online, we're in a headspace. It's like I'm losing contact with my senses. It's a lot. I feel a lot of energy, maybe in my cock, but I'm not really feeling my body. I'm not really tracking what's going on in my body. I'm not aware of my breath. I'm not feeling sensation in much of my body, except like maybe a clench and like like a fast movement. And so we lose contact with the body. We're also losing contact with a lot of sensory data. We're losing contact with our nerve endings. We're losing contact with like the body experience. So that's just like a practice way of being. So if we do that over and over and over again all the time, we just don't have that. It's not that it's bad. It's just that we don't have the practice of really tuning into what's going on in the body. So
Right.
it's taking time again, this way to be like, I'm going to set a 3-hour time window for myself on Saturday. And
That's
I'm
great.
going to, well, people say, I actually have clients that are like, why would I do that? Why would I schedule? I'm like, well, the last time you went down the porn trail, how long did that last? Like, it was like 2 hours. And I'm like, how'd you feel? Like I didn't get anything done, frustrated, so it's just shifting the mindset, but the reason is so that you can actually pay attention to what's going on in the body. So using a mirror. And if you're telling yourself a lot of shitty stuff about your body,
Notes here.
yeah, if you're telling yourself like a lot of shitty stuff about your body, you can't like avoid having to really feel into that and like being honest with yourself and just like framing it in this way. Like I've been telling myself that I'm not good enough. My body isn't big enough, or, and this is what I've been telling myself, and really just being honest and trying to hold some compassion about that. If you just make space for that over time, you can kind of like nullify the effect of that. I think when we try to run away from it and like circumvent it, then it stays lodged. But also just practically speaking, if you start to like sensitize your body, like you can like slap on your body and rub the skin like while you're playing with your cock, and your brain
Thank
starts to
you.
pick up these sensations like, oh, that goes with that. You're just kind of like, it's like pleasure mapping. You're like building a network. So this can even like, you can do this with anything. Like you can use all kinds of like sensations on your body, but it's to stimulate the nerve endings so that while you're playing with your dick, you're trying to also learn how to perceive what's going on throughout the rest of your skin, and then augmenting those sensations. And then you start to create like a lot more energy. And it feels really good. And you're paying attention to it because you're not necessarily paying attention to like what these other 2 or 3 or 20 guys are doing on screen. You're paying attention to what's happening inside you. And what also comes up in your feelings, because then there's like space to think about it and there's space to feel what's happening in you. And that brings up all kinds of fantasy information usually. It's super rich.
I don't know if this applies here, but I recently, and maybe this is why I actually feel quite happy. That I have a complicated relationship with bottoming in my ass and everything. And I've done 2 videos where I do actually put something up there. And it felt really natural to me now, but I never accessed it before because I always felt like my relationship with my ass is about someone entering it. And I completely forgotten that we used to just be pals and to hang out together. And so I've done this, and
you're describing like your relationship or the way that you perceive bottoming and how that might be shifting for you.
Yes, exactly. Because I mean, I think this is what the point I was making is we are all kind of used to sex meaning something to us, and a lot of the time involving other people. When a lot of you being sexual doesn't necessarily have anything to do with others. It's just you may perform it with others, but you don't. It's not about others. Right. It's all about you.
Right. It is all. Yes. Yeah. It's about what you're inward. Exactly. There's an amazing quote that I love. Esther Perel says that sex is not a thing that you do. It's a place that you go inside yourself with another or others. And when I learned that, I was just like, whoa, that's totally true. Because it's like a head space and body space that we enter into. And it's like this like fantasy world, and whatever we're doing with another person in real time, the quality of that connection is going to be determined by how much of that overlapping space we can share with somebody, like their inner world, our inner world, and are we meeting each other? You know, that's why often if you like have sex with a type of yours, and you're like, that was weird. That didn't really, they didn't deliver what I was looking. Well, it didn't deliver what you're looking for, because what we're looking for is this meaningful experience, and it's not just the sensation. That sensation is great, and it's the entry point, but it's not what we think the sensation means to us and about us. So when someone really gets that with us, we're like, whoa, this is, you know, it's like this like powerful connection, and it's like quote unquote chemistry.
So this brings up an interesting point. So would you say that following this kind of template of this is my type doesn't always get you what you want?
It doesn't, no. It's a numbers game. It might get you what you want, but it often, I mean, how in your own life can you reflect on that? Like for me, like, you know, following my type, you know, I can't leave a percentage, but I would say probably like maybe like 7 out of 10 times it was kind of like, oh yeah, next time, or like I'm hungry now, I want to go eat something, or, you know, there's not like, it's not the next craving, you know, it doesn't really satisfy what it is that we're looking for. I don't think we know what we're going after. So I mean, I think that's one of the things around, to kind of full circle around what's going on with the COVID thing. The opportunity and the invitation that I've been making for men is to, because of the moratorium on touch, is to really explore, like, well, what is this meaningful? What is this to me? Why? And you can utilize porn to understand that. You can start to, like, you know, instead of just kind of going off into a space where you're not really noticing yourself, like utilize it in a way where you're analyzing it like a poem, or like, you know, like a symbolic narrative of like your own experiences being projected out here, you know, and like really noticing like that moment when that happened on the video. That's you know, like there's a moment where it's like, oh, that was hot, and the rest of it I could take it or leave it.
Yeah, so many
those moments are like key, like kind of like crystallized moments of how we view ourselves, and how they're like an access to the inner world. That moment when he entered him, like, what do I think that means? Like, what do I think that guy's imagining right now? What do I think he's feeling right now? Is he feeling like he wants to be powerless? Is he feeling like he wants to be like, you know, it's also meaningful, but we don't see that on the video. We see like a physical experience of two people. We don't see their inner worlds, or what they're actually trying to suppress during the navigation of that scene.
Yeah, that's definitely, I find that to be very true. Based on the fact that a lot of the time people enjoy the work I've done, and I hated being on that set.
No, I think so. I think it's a moment we see something that really ignites us individually. And okay, it's a glimpse, right? Like in the presence of my object, I'm feeling what? It's a reciprocal action. And that's one of the first steps to really understand like a meaning. It's a lot of guys would say, I have nowhere to start with this. And it's like, what do you like about it? Like, it's really hot. Why is it really hot? I don't know. I really like his dick. Or like, you know, it's like, okay. Yeah. And then you just keep trying to like, so in the presence of that object, and when I get that object, then how am I feeling about myself? Then you can kind of start feeling it. It's like, well, I feel like I'm feeling worshipful, or I'm feeling like I'm really young again, or I'm feeling, those are all really big clues to your own erotic theme, you know, what really animates you on the inside.
What you just said, that someone looks at something and they think it's really hot.
Right.
This is the answer from almost everyone I speak to about things like, why do you like that guy? Or, you know, why do you like this, and so on. And I don't think we spend a lot of time exploring like what it means to us, really. We just kind of consuming that view or sensation.
Saying that it's hot is like saying like, how are you doing today? Great.
Right.
You might be doing great, but you might have like a complex.
How many times are you doing great when you say you're great, though?
Well, I mean, if I'm not doing great, I can't lie. I'd be like, don't talk to me. But what I mean is like, it's very generalized. It's not specific to what I'm actually going through. It's not telling you like, I'm feeling so energetic today. Well, that's different, you know.
Right. It's more polite. It's chit chat, isn't it?
Right. It doesn't really speak to the inner experience. And so hot is an entry point. It's again, I think of it as a thread that you would pull on and see that there's more as you pull.
Other ways that we can access this that aren't sexual. We just said that you make 3 hours of time for yourself, and it's not. I'm guessing it's not just the 3-hour wank, right?
I've been able to, could be. I mean, it kind of depends. I mean, some of the like tantric practices are like begin with like, you know, meditation first, getting into a really calm space, maybe a hot bath, anything to awaken your senses. Eat chocolate, take a hot bath, listen to music that you like. It's all about your five senses, you know, like look at things that you think are pretty, look at guys online, but then like put that away and be in the inquiry in space, and then like stretching, moving your body, dancing, like playing with yourself, work your energy up and try to like prolong it. I mean, a lot of guys really enjoy edging. It's already a practice that we all have in our vocabulary and we understand. Some men really, really love it. So it's utilizing that concept, but like not just energy in your cock. You're kind of like bringing your energy up all day and trying to like work that up. Like when you dance and you get lost in a dance, you feel really amazing. You know, like you're just like, I'm free, I'm alive.
You look like a dick.
Yeah. And so that's the space. And then, you know, following your fantasies. Super awesome information. And then if you want, I mean, you're asking this question in relationship to how to connect to other guys during these times. Is that what the question is to?
No, this was really to connect to yourself.
Well, I'm seeing like, for one, like creativity is the thing, you know, like imagination. And when we're in a collapsed, like contracted state, we can't really access the expanded playful states. So acknowledging the anxiety, coping with our anxieties in some kind of way that helps us get grounded, you know. For me, my own, like you mentioned, my own sex drive has been super low compared to the normal because of being contracted. And one thing I did is kind of I unplugged from the news. Like I'll check like the updates once a day, and I stopped doing, and that was for a while just like wanting to get like everything I could. So noticing that was not helping me. But just basic things like, you know, like getting good sleep, eating well, trying to take care of yourself every day, right? So a baseline of anxiety management. But then getting more expanded and like imaginative, you know, like playing with this inner child nature. Like when we're little kids, we get lost and not really think about time. We wouldn't think about like obligation. You know, that's the part of us that's really expanded and ready for spontaneous sexual connection. It's like when we're going cruising in that kind of, you know, like kind of just like, I'm in my own world. I'm in a completely different space and time that's not amenable to the laws of what's going on with coronavirus, right? And
right.
all that shit, right? So it's a headspace, and getting into that space is so amazing, because then I'm not like restricted there. I'm actually in this like land of fantasy, and I can play with that, and I can like engage other people in that space. I'm hearing from guys that I work with, like clients that like even on Grindr right now, they're having like these really awesome chats with people because the compressive nature of what's going on in our lives outside of our homes is making people want to open up more and share more. And so those conversations are always closer than we realize. We just have to do them, you know. So they're having like these dates with guys that they're meeting on Grindr, where they're like eye-basing or like edging with each other on their phones. There's been a great resurgence of like voyeur and like exhibitionism. And like you mentioned earlier, I think it was us that was talking about the sex in parks, you know, or like watching each other from a distance, you know.
Maybe
driving
it was
by.
you mentioned it actually, yeah.
I think it was. Well, that was like how I cut my teeth as a gay. But you know, like having friends, if you want to engage with friends, like have them like watch you online, you know, like having them drive by and you like do stuff in the window. Just so many ways to play with this if you get into this headspace of like possibility versus like I'm being punished, I'm restricted, I'm feeling the effect of my life, you know, and all the things that I've struggled with as a gay man. That's a different headspace than like we could do anything today, you know. You know, turning your house into a nightclub. Go ahead, what?
While you're talking, I'm realizing that in many ways we are, you're talking about living in a collapsed and constricted state, right? And I'm realizing that like when you go down the porn tunnel, that already is a constriction on your life. We do follow these little paths in our everyday life, which constrict us anyway. And I'm saying this because someone said, I think it's also organic, effortless pleasure, not a task. And we turn jerking off on a daily basis into a task, into something that you have to do before you go to sleep, or you won't fall asleep, or you're going to feel frustrated. So it's actually a chore, not really about pleasure. And it itself is constricting. So I feel like maybe there's like almost, ironically, maybe it's a blessing to be in a state where you're having to focus, to actually look at yourself and spend time with yourself. Well,
it is. It's like an adaptive pressure, you know. In a biological system, species evolve because of selective pressures. So like a selective pressure would be like some sort of environmental change that's going to affect what species continue to evolve and go forward based on what they're able to have in the population reflected in their genes. Same thing in the imagination level here. Like under these circumstances, there's a selective pressure being put on us, and I can rail against that, or I can be, try to work towards acceptance. I'm not saying that's easy. I'm not trying to imply that, oh, you should just get over it and have fun with yourself today. Because, I mean, there's a lot of shit to deal with. But
I mean, I just might, but.
but if we're being asked to adapt, well, yeah, it's like a time where, and that's kind of the headspace I'm trying to be in. And for me, it's not even really coming to lots and lots of sex right now. For me, I'm having to adapt around dynamics with my partner, like intimacy dynamics, two completely different dynamics than I've ever experienced. And I understand that men are really in a boat right now, whether you're partnered or have roommates or single, in which these are not circumstances that we've fully dealt with. So everything's going to be clunky, awkward. We need to have grace and compassion for each other. Yeah.
Can we talk about that? I would like a couple of tips from you.
Go for it.
For
Okay.
people who are in different circumstances, including living. Well, let's start with living with someone that you are with. Let's say you had a boyfriend, and for the term, for the time of the isolation, you decided to move in together, or maybe you lived together anyway.
Right.
And you are with each other all the time, and you may be feeling, I'm guessing, frustrated or or I don't know, spiteful.
Yeah. Vengeful, malicious.
Yeah. Want to throw them out the window.
Yes.
What would you suggest? What's your hot tip for someone who is experiencing that?
Well, communicating about what's happening, the real. No one really thrives in an environment where we're just like kind of constricting what we, like feeling like we can open up those conversations. If there's really, if you need tools, Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg, Don't Be Nice, Be Real by Kelly Bryson, both awesome books. Needing to communicate, because when you walk around your house and you are like compressing what you want to say and compressing your body, it just feels like it's not fun. It's not a pleasant experience. So having those conversations.
So having a bad housemate or someone you just really don't like living with and just being always stressed out. Great advice. What about someone who has been separated from their loved one and they can't, meet at the minute?
Yeah, that sucks. Like, in what way you mean? Like, what about them like connecting sexually? You mean?
Yeah. Like, give me a tip.
I love the sex tech things that are happening. I mean, I used to have this like blah about sex tech, like VR or it's called sex tech, like having like virtual reality or like playing with toys from afar. I think I saw somebody mention on here on the feed earlier, and I totally agree. Like these toys that are like Bluetooth and you can like play with together. I know they're cool. And you could be across the world and can be like controlling the sex toy. You can like watch porn together online, like synchronize it where you're like watching and having like screen shares, fantasy talks and journeys together. Super fun where you just go on a walk with each other through fantasy, and you just start kind of sharing. This is helpful to really practice like talking in real time too, like speaking our desires and like talking out loud about things that are a little bit like, can I say that? But like just that's so fun. It's so fun for me. That's one of my favorite ways to, when I'm separated from my partner, we like jack off and talk dirty on the phone. It's so fun. I used to have a lot of fun sex when I was younger, so it helped me feel that part of myself. I love doing that stuff.
So I'm guessing you could apply this, talking and being real, you could apply this to someone who's just broken up with someone while in isolation, right? Because I've heard a couple of people have, like, someone decided they're going to get divorced.
Yeah, what's the question? Yeah, divorces are rising.
Apply the same thing to be authentic and real and actually open up about it rather than, because otherwise you're going to be forced with being isolated with someone who you've got all this tension with. And maybe getting some space from each other.
Yeah, which is the hard thing, because a lot of us don't feel a lot of us have been reared in families where we didn't get to advocate for our needs. So there's already an uphill kind of struggle to learn to notice what we're needing. When you start being like, God, I hate the way he chews, blah, blah, like when he walks through the house, when you notice that, those are like, again, it's reflexive. What does this mean about me? Like, I need space. I need to not talk to a soul right now. So be learning about what that is when you're feeling it, and then advocating and asking for it, which is challenging. It can be. But it's really powerful though, because when you learn to ask for it and you feel empowered and you get yourself what you need, that feels like you're building trust with yourself and your inner child, and then your partner can respect and trust you more too, and everyone gets more happy when we start to advocate for what we need more. It's
Of
just,
course.
it's a win-win rather than the passive aggressive game.
Thank you so much, Finn. Is there anything else you would add?
No, I don't. I appreciate you a lot.
Go
And
fuck yourself, right?
yes, exactly. Yeah. Oh, I was gonna say that. Like, that's a great way to end. Like, this going to fuck yourself is like really like I don't have to necessarily fuck another person to fuck. That's like a mental space and a body space that I can access. There's so many resources online. Like, reach out to me if you have questions. If you want resources, I'm happy to like send books, resources, articles.
And I was actually about to say the same thing. Don't think that you're alone in this. If you're struggling, just remember there are resources wherever you are in the world. Please follow Impulse London, follow Finn Deerhart, and do reach out. Reach out to us if you need anything. May our kindness stretch beyond following the rules.
Yeah, totally. You can be a very civilly minded rule breaker in your own home. It's accessing a headspace.
All right, thanks very much, Finn.
Yes, thank you.
And
yes.
I'll speak to you soon. And big kisses to everyone.
Bye. Yes, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching.
Don't forget about the NHS celebration at 8. Go give them the clap.
Bye.
Bye.